Everyone and welcome. My name is Claudia Hammond and I'll be hosting today's meditation and mindfulness session with Caitlin Cady for Libraries Week 2022. And this is brought to you by Belinda, who are sponsors of this year's Libraries Week. So to introduce myself for a moment, I'm a broadcaster hosting BBC radio shows and podcasts such as All in the Mind on Radio 4, which covers psychology and mental health and neuroscience, and Health Check on the BBC World Service. I'm also visiting professor of the public understanding of psychology at the University of Sussex, and I'm the author of several books, including The Art of Rest, and that book has a chapter on it on mindfulness. So I'm delighted to have been invited here today to talk to our very special guest, Caitlin Cady. So thank you all for taking the time to join us today as we near the end of a brilliant week, which has been showcasing the best of our libraries, which are, of course, very much loved by very many people. Libraries are so crucial as centres for reading, of course, and places of information, but also inspiration for doing different things. And of course, community is at the heart of them as well. And so this year's Library Week celebrations have been focusing on how libraries inspire a love of learning for all and can help people to unlock and fulfill their potential, whatever stage of life they are at. There is something there for them. So our session today is going to look at this theme of learning and unlocking our potential through the lens of meditation and mindfulness. So Caitlin is a certified yoga and meditation teacher who's dedicated her life to making holistic wellness something that is accessible to everyone. And her first book, this brilliant book here, Heavily Meditated, Your Down-to-Earth Guide to Learning Meditation and Getting High on Life, has been featured all over the place in Vogue and Marie Claire and Women's Health magazine and lots of other places. And it also led to the creation of the Heavily Meditated app. Caitlin was born in the US and now lives in lovely Byron Bay in Australia. And she's been described by the Australian Yoga Journal as a well-being whiz, which I liked. And she delivers courses and classes to audiences across the world. And the whole idea of them is to create peace and calm and courage and joy. And in my work, I'm always fascinated by the ways that psychological and medical research can help us in our everyday lives. And so I'm really delighted to be able to host this session and to glean some insights from Caitlin. So here's what's going to happen. To kick us off, Caitlin is going to actually lead a short meditation exercise to help us all arrive in the room and decompress after our busy weeks and to get us into the right headspace for this session. Then she and I are going to have a chat for around 20 minutes on all sorts of things I want to talk to her about mindfulness and meditation and what the practice can do for us in our everyday lives. And then I want to make sure that there's plenty of time for your questions. So do be thinking of what you'd like to ask. If you have a question, do put it in the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen anytime you want, and we will do our best to get to as many of those as we can in this hour. And then we're going to finish up actually with an exclusive sneak preview of Caitlin's new book, The Hope Dealer, which is really fascinating and really clever. I've been really enjoying it, and that is due for release later this year. Hi Caitlin, how are you?
Hi, Claudia. I'm really well, thank you. Thanks for being here and holding the space for all of us.
You're very welcome. So over to you.
So I just want to begin by welcoming all of you into the space and just taking a moment to acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land that I live and work on, the Arakwal Bumbaran people of the Bundjalung Nation. I recognize that sovereignty of this land was never ceded and recognize their continuing connection to land, sea, and culture, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So to begin, just go ahead and find a nice place to sit. We're just gonna do a really brief but lovely meditation that will help you kind of clear your inner space and create an intention for your day. So, because I know I'm in Australia, so it's the end of my day, but it's the beginning of the day for most of you. So let's go ahead and just find a nice seat. So a seat that is comfortable and supportive and feels easeful. So if you are sitting in a chair or you're at a desk, you might wish to sort of scooch forward a little bit so that your feet can be firmly planted. And the spine can be nice and long, which just allows the breath to move freely in the body. When you find that nice tall spine and that solid foundation for yourself, just go ahead and close the eyes if that feels comfortable for you today. And tuck the chin slightly. And just take a moment to reflect, just kind of drawing a line in the sand, recognizing everything that it took for you to get here to this moment, all of the movements and actions of the day that have brought you to this moment. And just set them aside and notice how you are filling space at this moment. Just noticing what you're bringing to the space in this moment. What are you allowing into your inner space? What are you filled with? So thoughts, feelings, flavors of experience, just noticing what you are filled with. And also noticing how you're occupying the outer space that you're in. And there's no need to judge. It's just a witnessing and noticing. And then just begin to breathe in and out through the nose if that's available for you today. I invite you to count backward from 10 so that on each exhale, you go down a number and the body relaxes more deeply. So 9 is more relaxed than 10, 8 is more relaxed than 9. Just taking your time, deep, smooth, slow inhale, deep, smooth, slow exhale. And with each exhale, just shed a layer of tension, worry, stress. With each exhale, drop your thoughts, drop any worries, any negative feelings, just letting them go. On each exhale, relaxing any holding or gripping or tightness in the body. And seeing if you can relax a little more deeply. So that with each exhale, you feel more relaxed and also lighter. When you reach the last breath, just allow yourself to settle into stillness. Become aware of your body breathing. Just allowing the breath to find a natural tidal rhythm. The body is still and steady as the breath moves in and out. Slow, smooth, effortless breath, flowing in and flowing out. Begin to see, sense, or feel the breath moving in through the top of the head and downward through the body to the base of the spine. And then sweeps back up. So on inhale, the breath moves down through the crown of the head, down to the base of the spine. And on exhale, see, sense, or feel the breath rising up from the base of the spine to the crown of the head. And as the breath sweeps down, begin to sense the body as being hollow. Hollow, spacious, empty, like a hollow bamboo. Inhale, the breath rises up from base to crown. The breath flows freely, sweeping through like a breeze through a hollow bamboo. And worries, thoughts, feelings all dissolve in the pure, spacious field of the body. In this pure inner space, the breath is unobstructed. There's nothing to catch the breath, nothing to catch your attention, nothing to cling to, nothing to get or give, nothing to desire, nothing to resist. Just resting at ease, spacious and empty. Breath flowing freely, sweeping from the crown to the base and up from the base to the crown. A hollow bamboo, empty, spacious, swept clean by the breath. Now please take a moment to once again reflect. You now have a clean slate, an open space. And with that comes an opportunity to fill the space consciously. So just take a moment to consider, how will you fill your inner space today? How will you fill the spaces around you today? What is the tone, the flavor, the feeling that you want to create within and around yourself today? Just taking a moment to set an intention on how you would like to imbue your internal space. When you have clarity, just take a moment to generate the feeling within yourself. So see, sense, feel that intention coming to life, letting that feeling spread through your body like a sunrise. Now visualize yourself moving through your day with this feeling, with this intention. And consider, how will you let this flavor or feeling flow outward into the spaces around you today? Remembering that you have the power to not only generate your internal landscape, but also to let that feeling and intention expand into the spaces around you. Visualize how you let your intention, this feeling within yourself, spread out into the spaces around you, your workspace, your home space. How will you shape the spaces you interface with today? When you feel a sense of clarity, bring the palms together at the heart and seal your intention for the day. Bowing your chin and offering up your practice. You might like to mentally repeat, may my practice help me show up as my highest self today. May my practice be of service to others. Go ahead and rub the palms together to create some heat. Place the palms over the eyes. Just take a moment here, feeling the warmth from the palms. And lower the palms down and come back to life. And as you move back into your day, remember that whenever you wish to reset and reconnect with your intention, you can simply tune to the breath sweeping through the body from crown to base and base to crown. And then consciously refilling the space with your intention. Thank you for joining me for that practice. I hope you're feeling really relaxed. Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you for that. That has certainly taken me into a really nice space now, and it's amazing how you can kind of impact the whole mood and you know everyone's mood at this moment. And I really like the idea that you're kind of setting us up for the day as well. The way you've timed it. Do you do different sorts of meditation at different times of day according to what's going to happen next?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that's what's so wonderful about meditation, is that, you know, there is no one size fits all, and there's a whole menu of options for us to choose from. So we can really, you know, reach for what is called for. And I think that that's, for me, very empowering. And I think for many regular meditators who maybe have a sort of diverse practice, it's empowering because it means that, you know, you have different tools to reach for. And that if you try one thing and it doesn't help or it doesn't serve you in that moment, that there are other options. Yeah.
And how did you first discover meditation?
Well, I first reached for meditation really out of desperation. I had a diagnosis of chronic Lyme disease, which is a disease from a tick. And it's, you know, it's pretty debilitating. And I was sort of told I was just going to have to live with it, but it affected my life drastically. And I was really desperate to heal myself. So I tried all the things, you know, every kind of conventional Western medicine option, and also every alternative option. And at the end of the day, I felt like I'd tried all of the things and I still, you know, wasn't 100% well. And so I reached for meditation as a last resort. Truly, I thought, well, like, this is the last thing that I've been told I should try, and I've really resisted it. And as it turned out, you know, a regular meditation practice, I believe, was sort of the key, the last piece of the puzzle that helped me heal. And I've been free of Lyme disease now for over a decade. So it's, you know, I'm super passionate about it because it literally changed my life. And I found that it was just harder than it needed to be to get started. You know, anybody who's dabbled in meditation can, I think, probably relate to, like, you know, scrolling through YouTube videos, looking for a decent meditation, and then getting halfway through and being like, this is not for me. So really my motivation was to make it easy for other people to tap into the benefits of a regular practice.
Yeah, because it can feel, I don't know, sometimes as though there are lots of rules that if you go to, I've been to various meditation classes, and it's kind of, this is what you're going to do and this is the way you're going to do it. And what I found really refreshing about your book was that you're saying, no, there's loads of different ways you can do it. And if you don't like that, you can try this. And it doesn't mean that you're no good at it because you found it difficult.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's one of the biggest sort of myths about meditation is that, like, there's, you know, that it's dogmatic and that there's one way should work for everyone. You know, I think that that's not true of anything, right? Like, it's not true of styles of eating or diet. It's not true of exercise. Like, why would it be true for meditation? So I think, you know, it's so wonderful to be able to try out different techniques and see what suits you, because for many of us, the first thing we try will not feel easeful or natural, and that's okay. So it's really about empowering yourself to get out there and sample the goods, which is, you know, in my book, Heavily Meditated, I really wanted to offer a variety of techniques or focal points for people to try, so that if watching the breath makes you feel more anxious, then don't do that. Try something else. And you might find that you'll circle back to that and it will become a practice that you love doing, but doesn't mean that it's the right practice for that moment of your life.
And do some people find it easier than others? I mean, I know it's easy to try doing it, and then you sort of think, oh, but my mind is going all over the place. This isn't working. I'm clearly no good at this. But do some people find it makes more of a difference for them than others? I think it's interesting when you look at the evidence on it, that it's hard to find evidence about who it suits best and who it doesn't. Or is it just that people are not necessarily able to find the best way for them, do you think?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I love that question. I mean, I certainly think that for some people, you know, I think for every person, it feels hard at first. And it's once you accept that, you know, that it is a practice. And I love Sally Kempton, who's a wonderful meditation teacher. I love the way she frames it, which is that it's a meditation sit-up. So it's like your mind wanders and you bring it back, and your mind wanders and you bring it back. And that fundamentally is the practice. Of course, there are higher aims with meditation. You know, we can have higher sort of spiritual aims as well, but on a fundamental basic level, it really is just about doing sit-ups with your mind. And I think that when people start to think of it that way, it really changes the sort of the shame around, I'm not good at meditation. You know, I often say to people, they're like, oh, I just have a really busy mind. And I'm like, friend, you're not special in that way. Like, right? I mean, Claudia, you would be able to speak to this more than me. It's like, that's the nature of the mind. It's hypervigilant, right? It's looking for threats, and it's looking for things that are like delightful or charming. That's its sort of two motivations. And if you just do a quick survey of your thoughts at any given time, it's either like worrying about, you know, the past or the future, or thinking about like, what delicious thing will I have for lunch? So I think just naming that alone can help us step into practice with a different expectation about what it's supposed to feel like, if that makes sense.
So even though you're a very experienced meditator, does your mind still wander while you're meditating?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that if you ask any teacher, like when I ask my teachers, this is part of being human. You know, certainly there are people who are, you know, reaching transcendent states every day and, you know, are fully realized beings. But for most of us, it's about working with the mind. And truly, I think that thinking is a prerequisite for meditation, because if we didn't think, we wouldn't need to meditate, right? Like it's there for us to work with it. But certainly, yes, absolutely. And some days, you know, your mind will be busier than others. And that's the beauty of showing up regularly and daily, if possible, is that you start to notice like what impacts how it feels when you sit down. Because the food that you eat, the quality of the sleep that you have, you know, the company that you keep, you know, all of these different things in our life can impact how readily we're able to, you know, move into meditation. And the breath is such a key one too, in terms of knowing how to prepare yourself for meditation. It's going to give you much more of a sense of peace and success, I think, in a practice, is if you do a few things to sort of prepare yourself.
And what do you think the most common barriers are to doing meditation for people? Is it about having the time, or the feeling that they don't quite know how to do it, or that it's embarrassing? What do you find?
Yeah, I think that overall, I would categorize it as perfectionism. You know, it's this, if I can't do it perfectly, I'm not going to do it at all. And the truth is that, you know, a small imperfect practice has the power to change your life. That's just the truth. Because if you show up and you do it regularly, even if you think you're doing it wrong, by carving out space for silence and stillness, that alone is going to have an impact on your life and the way that you're perceiving yourself and the world around you. So I think, you know, whether your objection is I don't have time, or I have a busy mind, or, you know, I'm no good at it, or whatever the objection is, it's usually around some kind of a fear of failure and a perfectionism. But I think also underneath that, and this is, I think, a shared sort of point of passion for you and I, Claudia, is just this resistance to stillness and rest in general.
Yeah.
And that's and I think it's a cultural issue. And so I think it can be helpful also to name that it's not your fault that it's hard for you to sit still and do nothing, because you have been conditioned to think that that's not okay. Right?
Yes,
we've all been conditioned to like hustle up a sense of self-worth by doing. So do you, I think that's a shared passion point for us, isn't it?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, there is this kind of cult of busyness that we think that, you know, busyness looks good. And so, you know, if people say to me, how are you? And I'll say, you know, how's work? I'll say, oh, busy, a little bit too busy, really. And in one way that feels true. But in the other way, it's a kind of claim to status in a way, isn't it? Saying, look, I must be really important because look how busy I am all the time. I'm just so busy. And then people feel that they can't stop. And so in the research that we did for the Art of Rest, that's in the Art of Rest, my book about rest, a significant percentage of people told us that they felt guilty every time they rested, that they felt they weren't allowed to stop and not even do nothing, but just do something that they found restful. You know, it could be gardening, could be running, could be something very active, but that they felt guilty whenever they did that. And I'm wondering if that's the same with meditation, that people feel, well, I shouldn't be stopping for 20 minutes to do this because look at all the things I must be doing and I've got to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, you know, it's sort of like when we talk about like focus issues, as far as, you know, people not being able to focus or being distracted by devices. And I think, again, like it's an important thing to know that like, it's not a personal problem. It's not a personal failing. It's created by the culture that we're living in now, because it's a revolution. Resting and getting still is an act of rebellion. And I think also like, I find that really makes me feel inspired to do it then, right? So sometimes it's just that reframe of like, actually, I am going to rest. I'm going to sit still because it's in opposition to the momentum of the world that I'm living in. And, you know, the other thing that can happen for us is like when we get still, it can be uncomfortable, right? To be still when we've been filling our lives to the brim. You know, it's like you look at people are taking their phones to the bathroom with them. Like there's no space. Like people, you know, it's like, when are you without your phone? In your shower, maybe. It's like in the car, on the tube, like everywhere you go, you've got your phone. So when it's going to feel a little bit unnatural to like set that aside, but you know, when you can get still, sometimes it feels uncomfortable, but truly it's where everything that we're seeking by overfilling our lives is found in stillness. That sense of wholeness, that sense of peace, that sense of calm, that sense of joy that is not, you know, that's beyond sort of the conditions of our lives. For me, and I know for a lot of other people, the only place to find that really authentically is in stillness. So it's this really funny paradox, isn't it? It's like we're out there doing all the things to try and chase something that's actually within us.
And do you think if we can do that, if people can, you know, carve out that space to meditate regularly, what sort of impact can that have on the rest of their lives and on the rest of their day, if you like? Or is it just, how easy is it just to then sort of forget it? Oh, well, I did that and now I'm off, busy.
Yeah. You know, I think that that's one of the reasons that I like to add a little bit of intention setting into a practice, is because it is a nice way to help you carry it into your day with you. But I think that, you know, I know that you love research and science and all of that, and so do I. And I think, you know, if we look at it through the lens of science, it's like it's impacting your nervous system, right? So if you're shifting out of the sympathetic nervous system and into the parasympathetic nervous system for even a few moments and giving your body that opportunity to reset, or doing it regularly enough that you might be able to shift into parasympathetic dominance, right? And for those who maybe don't know those terms, I'm sure everyone does now, but the sympathetic is, you know, fight, flight, or freeze. And the parasympathetic is known as rest, digest, repair, reproduce. So those are sort of functions that are happening in those different aspects of the nervous system. So if you're stepping out of that like fight, flight, or freeze that most of us are finding ourselves in kind of on a constant basis, you're going to be creating a shift in every system in your body, right? I mean, I'm sure, and this is a topic I'm sure that, you know, you've explored in great detail as well, Claudia. But for me, that was, I think, really what happened, you know, with being able to heal from Lyme disease, was I created a shift in my nervous system where my body could actually it was safe for it to heal. It was safe for my immune system to reboot, because I wasn't like running around thinking I was being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. So that, you know, so that alone is going to make an impact on your life. But then there's the spiritual aspect as well. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you were going to say about the spiritual aspect.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, there's the science behind it, which we could spend hours talking about. But then there's the spiritual aspect of what as well, which is just like, you know, it's connecting you to something greater than yourself. It's connecting you to that deep sense of peace and worthiness within yourself. And that is going to help you show up with the best of you. You know, it's going to help, it's going to shape the way that you see others and the way that you see the world and the way that you see your role in the world. And at least for me, the on-flow effect of that is limitless, because when you have a fundamental perspective change like that, it shifts everything. You know, it shifts everything.
And I like that you say in your book that this book is for you if you want to learn the basics of how to meditate without dying of boredom, or spending your mortgage payment on training, or retreating in silence and living on rice for 10 days. So you've got a different way of doing it all. So if you've never approached meditation or mindfulness before, where is the best place to start? How do you start?
Well, listen to a copy of Heavily Meditated on the BorrowBox app. It's a great, it is I made it as a manual. So it is a sort of practical handbook. But if you just want to go ahead and get started today, you can, I think, invoke a couple of principles. One, start where you are. So there is absolutely no need for you to try and bust out a twice daily 20-minute practice if you're brand new. So I think this is one of the problems with some of these approaches to meditation, that people go on a retreat or they learn that they need to do it a certain way or for a certain amount of time every day. And that actually ends up, in my experience, being less empowering for people than just starting small and, weaving something in that feels really doable for you. So start where you are. And if in your life, that means 7 minutes in the morning, do that, because that's going to have an impact, right? Remember, number 2 would be, remember that done is better than perfect. So these small regular victories are so much more empowering than, oh, I meditated for 20 minutes like 3 Wednesdays ago. That's not going to have the same impact as doing it for 7 minutes every day. I also think that making a date to do it, so many of us have major decision fatigue. It's like you walk in the door and someone asks you what's for dinner and you're like, don't come at me with another question. So if that resonates for you, then take that decision off of your plate and just, as far as like when you're going to meditate, and just set a date to meditate. For me, my morning practice is my non-negotiable, and I love doing an evening practice before bed as well, but I don't have to, I think half the resistance of meditation is just showing up. So if you sit down on the cushion, you've won. So when you just build it in, and I think that there's the wonderful book by James Clear, where he suggests habit stacking. So it's like, if you do it, like, let's say right after you brush your teeth, something you do every day, just do it right after that. And then you don't have to debate, you just do it. And then lastly, remember that it's a practice. So remember this meditation sit-up idea, and that when your mind wanders, that's just an opportunity to come back to the focal point of your practice. And also, I don't think you should try and go it alone. Like, listen to a guided meditation to begin with. I think it's really helpful. For 2 reasons. One,
someone to concentrate on, doesn't it? Something to focus on. It does,
but but also, like, you pointed out at the beginning, like, oh wow, that really shifted the space.
Yeah.
And that's the power of being led by someone who does it regularly, is that it's almost like you're stepping into their slipstream of energy. And it helps you find maybe a deeper place with your practice. So there's real value in that approach.
And we've got lots of questions coming in from the audience. And just before I start on those, there's one thing I wanted to ask you about well-being, and particularly since it's Libraries Week. Are there ways, do you think, that how can libraries help people to look after their well-being?
Oh, well, I love libraries so much. I was telling Claudia that when we met earlier in the week, to just say hello, that I'm just like the biggest library fan at my library probably twice a week. And I think there's so many, what I notice in my local library is that it really is just a hub for the community. It's such a beautiful space for communities, and you get people from all different walks of life. So there are so many different ways that I think libraries can weave in, some of these tools. I think obviously doing, book clubs or reading groups around a particular book, or even I know that Belinda does these wonderful campaign titles where, there's multiple copies that can be borrowed, audiobooks, and displays, even my local library always does these really wonderful displays. So it's like, giving people, putting those tools center stage by putting together a really interesting display of books around a certain wellness topic. And then I also think, for children, libraries are a wonderful place for children to sort of explore new ideas as well. And so there could be the opportunity to do, a craft like a mindfulness jar where you make a glitter jar essentially, and children, you can, engage them in making the craft, and then they take that home and they shake the glitter jar and practice watching the glitter or their thoughts settle. So there's these really fun, activities that I know my library does things during the school holidays for the kids as well. So I think some of those are it's really just about, I think, creating the space for the conversation and offering the tools. And I know for me, librarians have just like, they know what's up. They know they've got the goods. So I think even just, those conversation starters sometimes can really inspire people to check something out that, maybe they wouldn't do before.
Yeah, always worth asking, always worth talking to librarians, I think, because they know so many things, so many interesting places to point you to. Now, we've got all sorts of questions. Here's an interesting one. How long would you say it takes to start feeling the impact of meditation in your life? So if you start tomorrow, say, when will people start feeling some sort of impact?
Well, it's a great question. It depends. And that's the answer to so many things, right? But I think what can be helpful to remember is, this is a quote that one of my teachers, that I heard him say many years ago, which is that the measure of your meditation is the quality of your life. So it can be helpful to remember that if you sit down to meditate and you do it, let's say you get a nice streak going, you do it for 7 days and you're like, I'm still frustrated, my mind is still wandering, or I'm not feeling a sense of peace. Don't judge it by how your practice feels. Sometimes you'll have a blissful practice, but sometimes not. But really look at your life and look at maybe situations where you are showing up differently. And it can be helpful if you have, a dear friend or a family member who can be a mirror for you. I know that for me, when I started meditating, my husband was like, keep doing this, like whatever you're doing, keep doing it. So I think, looking to the people around you and sharing that with them, like what you're doing and what your intention is, and just saying, if you notice any changes in me, like, please feel free to mirror those back to me, positive changes. But I think that what you will notice is that within what I experience with most of my clients and students is that, like, within a week of regular meditation, they're feeling different. But again, it depends. It depends, on why you're doing it and what your goal is. But it's probably not as long as you think.
Interesting. And there's a question here about meditating whilst being a parent. How do you find time as a parent to meditate? Good question there. And how does it inform your parenting at all?
Oh, wow. These are great questions. I have 3 kids. So for all the parents out there, I really feel you. And, 2 things. One, I set a boundary with them. So I've been meditating for their entire lives. So they're just used to it. They open the door, they see me, and they close the door mostly, walk away. I've always had a boundary with them that you are welcome to join me, but if you're disruptive, if you're not in the mood, if you're going to be, then move on and find something else to do until I'm finished. So I think opening the space for them to see you do it and to join you if they're in the, if they are in the space to join you, then that can be really beautiful, because you're also setting such a valuable example of self-care and stillness for your children.
That's interesting. So it's not that you're trying to sort of lock yourself away. They know exactly what you're doing, and this is what you're doing. Join in if they want to.
Absolutely. And I find that they mimic it. They're still quite young, but I'll come into a room and they'll be like sitting in a cross-legged position with a mantra, and they definitely mimic it. And I'm like, that is just great. Like, I don't care if they're actually meditating or not. I think just the fact that they see that I value stillness and silence, and that I have a boundary around my own self-care. I think that there's, that's a gift as a parent to give your child, is that example. So there's that. I also think that my children are probably no more distracting than my own thoughts. So I treat their chatter like I do my thoughts. Unless like all hell is breaking loose, then you need to go and attend to it and then come back to meditation. But even that is the practice of meditation, right? It's this, I'm maybe being distracted by a thought or whatever, and I'm coming back to my practice. That was a game changer for me, is just being able to sort of embrace the chaos of, the children running around, or even them like coming up and whispering like, "Mommy, can we have pancakes today?" That, you just invite it into your practice.
Yeah.
So,
and there's a question here. I love the sentiment of slowing down in such a busy world. Are there simple steps I can take to battle the need to be always productive and viewing myself as a failure if I'm not doing anything?
Oh gosh, I would love to spend like an hour on that question alone. I'm sure you would too, Claudia. Yes, I think again, it's like start small, start with something small. And, but before you do, take a look at maybe what's underneath the resistance. I think that I'm a big fan of resistance, because when it shows up, I know I'm onto something good, because resistance only shows up like when there's a lot on the line, right? So for me, what I've noticed in my life is that the more I resist a practice or whatever it is, like writing a book or doing something that's stepping out of my usual comfort zone, when the resistance shows up, I'm like, ooh, I am going straight for it now, because I know it's good. Because I think it's that, this idea that resistance tells you that it's keeping you safe. I'm staying busy because I need to make sure that I'm worthy enough, and but it's really keeping you small. It's keeping you in this limited version of yourself. So I think it can be helpful to take a moment to journal about, what are you resisting in rest, and why do you feel you maybe don't deserve it? And you'll probably find some very interesting and untrue beliefs in that process. And then, just give yourself 7 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, whether it's meditation or yoga nidra or just laying down and having a nap. All of those things are worthwhile. But I think the things that we touched on earlier, start where you are, done is better than perfect, and make a date to do it. Those are all great sentiments sort of apply.
And I think I'd add that whatever way you're trying to rest, whether it's meditation or whether it's something else that you find restful instead, one thing that people have told me they've found really helpful that I've talked about in talks and so on is reframing this moment as something you're doing that is good for you and your mental health, in the same way that most people, don't feel guilty when they go, say, running, because they know that it's really good for them physically and mentally as well, of course. But if you reframe that moment as something that is good for your mental health, when you look at all the evidence, the evidence for rest being good for us is enormous. And so then people are able to, I think, feel less guilty about it. So, what I love doing to rest is gardening. And I used to go and do things. And, if I was working at home, I would pop out into the garden in the afternoon and do things instead of working. But I would feel guilty that I was doing that for 15 minutes. Now I just don't. Now I just think, just as I run for my physical health, I'm going to go and garden for a while for my mental health, and that's okay. That is allowed, because I'm trying to protect my mental health and trying to protect my own well-being, and that's a good thing, not a thing to feel guilty about.
Absolutely. And I just want to dovetail with what you were saying, Claudia, because what I heard you say is something, something I like to do for rest. And I think that there is so much to be said for letting delight lead you. So don't reach for something just because Claudia and I said it was good for you. Do something that feels lovely and delightful and like joyful for you naturally. So whether that is gardening, or it's laying down and listening to music, or that there's something you can weave in, as an essential oil or a mist of some kind, like whatever, a blanket that you love, like let pleasure has a lot to teach us. So look for the things that you're naturally drawn to and let it be sort of a ritual of delight for yourself, because it shouldn't just be like brushing our teeth. I think that it should be something like gardening, that you get pleasure from doing it.
There's a question here about social media, and this person said they're interested in how each of us manage to cultivate and maintain a restful life when working in media and needing to engage with social media and the noise out there so much. How do you do that when you are online doing all sorts of things?
Yeah, I feel you on that. It is tricky, and it's designed to be tricky, right? So I think for me, something that's helped, a simple sort of reframe, is when I get on social media, before I get on social media, I ask myself, do I have something to contribute? Because if I'm just going there to consume, it's not a good use of my time. And so I think that if you can go there with the intention to either offer something up in the form of, engaging with people's posts and commenting and that kind of thing, or sharing your own, content. I hate that word, but, if you're going there to contribute in some way, great. But I think if you ask yourself that question, so often we're reaching for it without any clear intention, and it's just becoming this like deep dive. So for me, that's been a helpful sort of gateway. Like, why am I going to open this up? Like, am I here to actually offer something, or am I just going to eat content? So maybe that would help.
Yeah. And I think, and one of the things I do is choosing very carefully, say, who to follow on different things. And it's a bit like you were saying with the joy, does this bring me joy or not? And obviously different platforms, have different feelings and different purposes about them. But say on, Instagram, there's somebody I follow it's called something like History Eats. And it's beautiful, beautiful pictures of paintings done in history of food. And there's just, really beautiful plate of food from a 17th century painting. And there's just one different one every day. And they're just really lovely. And it's just that, looking at that is a joy. Whereas looking at a load of people arguing, I'm not personally so interested in. And so if I just see negativity, then I just stop following those people so that I don't see that. But you can find out, of course, amazing information. And, I'll often find really interesting pieces of new research that I find that people have say tweeted. If you follow the right people who are there are several librarians I follow actually who are just tweeting really interesting psychological studies that they find. And then I see things and think, we could do something about that, so it's using it for different purposes, I think.
Yeah. Well, that comes back to intention, doesn't it? So, think about your intention and how it's making you feel. And also read the book Stolen Focus, because I think it changes the way, again, it's that, where we started our conversation about like the guilt, the personal failing around not wanting to rest. And it's the same with, social media, and it's designed to work against us. And I think we all know that, but I think that book Stolen Focus really hammered it home pretty clearly as far as just the extent of it. So I think, educating yourself a little bit about, which maybe if you're already working in media, you're hip to it, but I think taking the feeling of personal failing out of it is important.
Yeah, I think that is very true. One more quick question: do you play music while you write? And if so, what sort of music?
Oh, yes, I have a playlist on Spotify. I have a writing playlist. Maybe there's a way I can share it. I listen to music without words when I'm writing. So for me, it's all, I love classical music, but I also wrote, heavily meditated, largely listening to binaural beats. I don't know if anybody's ever experimented with that, but can help, getting your brain into certain brain waves for creativity and things like that. And that was how I wrote that book, because, I had little children. And so I used a Pomodoro timer.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the 25-minute blocks of time, and which is like the best app. Speaking of technology, it's the best app that I could ever recommend if you're trying to do some kind of work over time, is invest in a Pomodoro timer. And I listen to the binaural beats.
And it's interesting, isn't it, the Pomodoro timer, because it's very intense. So the idea is you put it on, you can change the minutes, can't you? You can do different times. So sometimes some people find 25 minutes might be too long. You might be only able to do it for 18. And the idea is you don't look at anything else during that time. You just concentrate. And it doesn't sound that long, concentrating on your work for 18 minutes, but it kind of is. But if you do lots of Pomodoros in a row, and you can have a quick break in between and look around and things and move, maybe meditate. And you can get a lot done, actually, can't you, in a sort of short time?
Yeah. It's actually remarkable how much, and again, I try not to think of it as a productivity tool, but I think of it as like a satisfaction tool.
That's good.
It's something that helps me stay focused, and then I feel more satisfied because I've done work that's meaningful.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for all those questions. Now we have a special Libraries Week treat. Caitlin is going to read a short extract from her new book, which is called The Hope Dealer, and that will be published later this year. And but I've been lucky enough to see an early copy, and what I really like is this is a book you can dip in and out of it to improve your day, can't you? So what is the idea of it?
Yeah, well, thank you for those kind words. So the Hope Dealer is, really designed to be an interactive tool. So it's 101 inspiring messages for your day. So you can, whether you're looking at the hard copy or you're listening to the audiobook, you can certainly just read it or listen to it start to finish. And you can also interact with it sort of as you would an Oracle deck, where you might want to just sort of by random pick a message for your day. So they're really short, sharp, somewhat sassy messages that are all around, just, trying to help all of us reconnect with our highest selves and live with more courage and more creativity and more joy, and, really show up as our highest selves for our own good, but also for, everyone that we interact with. And
you're going to read us a short extract from that now.
I am. And, I was thinking that I would read one about self-doubt, but I think I'm actually going to read a piece about being an imperfectionist.
Oh,
because I think that is just, maybe a little bit relevant to some of the things that we've been talking about in terms of let's just ditch the whole perfectionism thing. It's so overrated, isn't it? Okay. So this, I love story time. Okay, so this one is called Be an Imperfectionist. I've learned that death changes your relationship with fear. Unexpectedly losing someone you love can make you feel intensely anxious and controlling. You don't want to let anyone you love out of your sight ever again. And yet, loss also makes you brave as hell. You realize just how precious this life is, how uncertain your time here is, and how the judgments of others you fear so much matter so little. You come to understand how much you have to lose, your beloveds. Paradoxically, you also realize how much you have to give and how little you have to lose by being brave and generous with your life instead of worrying about whether you're good enough. I'm not afraid of being imperfect anymore. I'm not afraid of not being good enough. I'm more afraid of dying with all of this goodness stuck inside of me, unused and unshared. When it's my time to go, I want to know in my bones that I didn't let fear get in the way of sharing my gifts. I don't want to live a small, perfect life. I want to live a big, brave, imperfect one. Are you with me? Don't waste a moment of this life, my love. If you're waiting until your plate isn't so full, your to-do list is done, your laundry is all folded, your closet is cleaned out, your dishes are done, your hamstrings are more flexible, your mind is more still, your body is slimmer, your poem is more finished, or your prototype is more polished, stop. Stop being a perfectionist. Stop waiting for everything to be in perfect order. Stop waiting for the perfect time. Stop waiting for the clean slate. Stop waiting behind order and control. Stop second guessing. Stop procrastinating away this life you have to live, the goodness you can give, and all the joy there is for you to have. Stop waiting to be perfect. Instead, just start. Start now, just as you are, just as your life is. Tight hamstrings, busy mind, full schedule, shoestring budget, basketfuls of laundry, sink full of dishes, paintings that could use just one more stroke, poems that could use one less word, ideas that could be more polished, timing that could be better. Screw it. Get out here and live. Start doing the things you've been meaning to do. Start writing, start painting, start meditating, start stretching, sign up for the course, send the proposal, book the ticket, post the poem, share the photo, mail the letter, read the book, make time for the friend, have the party, speak up, sing, pack the picnic, lie on your back underneath the stars and laugh while the dishes fill the sink and the laundry sits undone, because that is living. Perfectionism steals your life. Imperfection lets you do more living. So start living your life like an imperfectionist. Being fully alive looks good on you, and living your life fully means we all get to delight in the goodness that you have to share.
Thank you very much. It's so true there. I liked your mention of to-do lists there as well, because I think we have to accept that our to-do lists will never be done. Like, you might get through it on one day, but there'll be more things the next day anyway, and that we just have to live with to-do lists and still do the other things we want to do as well. Well, thank you so much. That sounds brilliant. And we look forward to that coming out. That is called The Hope Dealer. So thank you to everyone for joining us today. And I know we have libraries from across the UK and Ireland who've taken time out, and I know how busy you are, to log in and to listen. And so we really appreciate you doing that. And thank you as well to all the members of libraries who've joined us. I hope you've enjoyed the session and learned a little more about how meditation might help you tap into your potential, and that you don't have to be good at it, that is okay. In fact, everything's okay, which sounds good. So for the month of October, Heavily Meditated, which I do recommend, is available for libraries to purchase as a campaign title on BorrowBox, meaning, of course, that all your members can listen to the audiobook without cues. And The Hope Dealer will be available exclusively via BorrowBox from its release in November. My books, The Art of Rest and Mind Over Money, are also available to libraries exclusively as e-audiobooks via BorrowBox. And my new book, The Keys to Kindness, is published on the 10th of November. And from that date, that will be available for libraries to get via, of course, BorrowBox from that date. So I just want to close by saying a huge thank you to libraries in general, actually, really, because your dedication in difficult times has been really amazing. And I'm still really grateful to the tiny library in Sandy in Bedfordshire, where I grew up, which definitely inspired me to a life of reading and forever learning new things. And then, as an adult, I've written 5 books, and I couldn't have written any of them without libraries. So thank you for that. You are vital institutions. It's been lovely to be able to celebrate with you today. Thank you to you again, Caitlin. It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you. And happy Libraries Week. And until next time, goodbye.